Hello and welcome to the Car Podcast with Chris Harris and his very, very tired little friends. Well, three of us are tired. One of us is on holiday and shouldn't be here. So Neil Clifford, thank you so much for stepping up and sitting in a cafe somewhere in Sicily to be with us. It wouldn't be the same without you. Chris Harris is sleep deprived and what he might describe as a little bit grouchy. But he is going to, when he's grouchy, this man delivers. Like a heavyweight boxer, we know we're in for a wild ride and maybe some yachting yarns. Manish Pandey was living the dream last night in Rome on a lovely balcony overlooking what can only be described as Rome Central Park with the aristocracy of Rome, having watched Luca's films. So he'll tell us all about that. And I drove back from Le Mans. No, I didn't. I got a taxi back from Le Mans, effectively. But it's been great fun, and I'm really enjoying my time down there. We'll talk about that in a minute. So to start with, this is written down wrong. Often our agendas are written down wrong. But what we want to talk about is sort of paddle shifty gearboxes versus manual gearboxes with a bit of automatic gearboxes. It's written down as automatic gearboxes. When are they good and bad? For the most part, these days, automatic gearboxes are a big... because they're mostly flipping brilliant, aren't they? They're just so well calibrated and they work well. But go back to 1996 and the front cover of Autocar magazine had a yellow Ferrari 355. Chris Cooper will remember it because he's a nerd like me, and I reckon Neil Clifford might as well. Managed to probably just out being a normal adult and wasn't sitting in a cubicle with a magazine as a young adult. The cover, I can't remember the exact wording, was Ferrari fits its F1 gearbox to the 355, I think was the sentiment. So it took the F1 paddle shift and they called it the F1 shift. That stuck. It's still called an F1 shift and the button still says F1 on it in all Ferraris. And they probably transformed performance cars in a way that hasn't been repeated since. Maybe the DCT when it came along was the same, but the F1 paddle shift gearbox was and remains one of the most controversial things ever fitted to a car because it took us down a path, and I think many people slightly regret supporting it. They thought it was great at the time, but it had an awful lot of drawbacks, and in its early iterations, good Autocar word that, iteration.
Word of the day.
It was a bit shit, if I'm honest with you. So I'm going to pass over to Neil first because Neil posed this one. And Neil always has such contrary views on this stuff because he'll come out and say automatic gearboxes are shit. Manuals are people with 7 legs, and he loves the early paddle shifts. So I never know where he's going to go because he's so mauve. Go on, Neil.
Well, if you remember, it also cost a lot more money. Didn't it? It was a very expensive option, if I recall. And we were all very excited about it, weren't we, when we were reading those magazines? And we were stupid enough to think that it was going to be so much better than the manual, which clearly it wasn't. It was crap. And I can talk about my own experience of 599 in that regard. But actually, what I'd like to talk about is the actual normal automatic gearbox. And you guys can talk about DTC or F1, because actually automatic gearboxes, when they're good, are really, really good. And my experience, I suppose, let's talk about big S-Class Mercedes, 6.9, 6.3, or you can talk about Range Rover. When you can just lounge along, you can just have pleasure. It takes the hassle out of driving, doesn't it? So I don't think it's negative. The one thing I find negative is when there's those stupid buttons called Sport.
Oh.
It never does anything, does it?
No, it does do something. It makes it worse.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Yeah, okay. It makes it worse. I think the key is when you try and press that Sport button, I don't know, Bentley Continental T would be my experience. It's so disappointing. And they should never do that. They should just keep them automatic and make them automatic and absolutely just lovely and easy and no hassle. F1, you guys can talk about because it's really, really rubbish and only really improved when it got to 458 or F12. And then, frankly, it's bloody wonderful. And you can't imagine those cars almost with a manual gearbox. I remember Chris in his TDF review, the yellow car around the Ferrari track. It's an impossible car to have a manual gearbox. But automatics I love, particularly in vintage, big, fat cars. Pleasurable. That's my view.
Chris Cooper will have a view on this. Prepare yourselves.
We forget how bad they used to be. Both slushmatic, waftmatic, torque converter gearboxes. And I've got a slightly different view to Neil about old big autos. My memories of cars my dad had and cars I tried, so let's go back to 70s and 80s, and then cars I tried with big engines and 3 or 4 speed gearboxes. They were quite sort of jerky. They didn't have lots of electronics to smooth out ignition and timing and all those kind of things. So I always remember being slightly disappointed by torque converter, waftomatic automatic gearboxes. But now, I mean, they're brilliant, aren't they? Really. The F1 thing is really interesting because why did Ferrari develop the paddle shift, the automated manual gearbox? Because it was a sequential gearbox, like a motorbike gearbox. So you could go up a gear, up one gear, up another gear, down one gear. And the Ferrari 639, wasn't it? 1989 Ferrari F1 car, when Mansell won the first race. He famously booked a flight back in the afternoon because he didn't think the car was going to finish. He won the race and cut his hand on the trophy. Remember that? That made him happy, didn't it? I've missed my bloody flight. I've got a cut hand. Yeah, Nigel, you won the race, though. You won your first race for Ferrari. People might remember that bit rather than you cut a hand and you missed your flight anyway. So, but it was, engineers listening to this, not the failed engineer like me, but my recollection is, why did they do that? I think it did it for 2 things. One, because it removed the possibility of a missed shift in a racing car. That's quite important. You miss a shift, not only do you lose time, you might lunch the gearbox. So automate the shit out of that. Get the driver. Engineers like taking the driver out of the equation because drivers make mistakes. So the first Ferrari F1 gearbox sort of like, we could take the driver out of this. Let's tell them it's good for them, but actually it's good for us. We've taken the squidgy human out of the loop. And there was a bit of time, wasn't there? Because you could save a bit of time because every gearbox was the same. Every gear change was the same. None of that had anything to do with making a road car experience better.
Before Manish answers this, can we just very quickly do my teammate Chris Hoy is about to go into qualifying for our race at Le Mans. I thought it'd be nice if we send him a little message saying well done, saying best of luck. So, Chris, very best of luck this morning. It looks like it's raining and thundery. These are the people that you listen to when you listen to our study podcast. They're about to say, good luck, Chris.
Good luck, Chris. Go well.
Good luck, Chris. Good luck.
Good luck, Chris.
Go well, brother.
Amazing.
We love you.
Good man.
So, Manish, from the comfortable corner of Belsize Park, did you have strong views on the introduction of the F1 gearbox into the Ferrari 355 in 1996?
From the comfortable corner of Belsize Park. Well, I wasn't in Belsize Park at the time. I was in a tiny flat in Kensington, which is even more comfortable. So I thought it was just bloody marvellous, okay? I didn't drive one for another... I think the first time, I've driven a 355 3 times in my life. I think the first time I did it was early millennium. So it would have been 5 years later. And I have to say, first of all, just seeing it in Formula One, it was that sort of clever little Pandora's box you've described. At the beginning, the real way it was sold is the driver just does not take his hands off the steering wheel. And if you remember, do you remember there's a move that Nigel Mansell made in 1990 going around the outside of Gerhard Berger at Peraltada corner in Mexico? And Berger just thought he was mad for doing it. I don't think you could have done that without a semi-automatic gearbox because literally he was flipping up. So he does this great move. The flip side,
Nigel would have tried.
100%. But the flip side is they don't miss gears anymore. And if you don't miss gears anymore, this is one thing that it was Alain Prost's big bugbear about modern Formula One. One of the reasons why overtaking is such a disaster is that people just don't miss gears anymore. And he always felt that half the art of pursuing someone, being right up their arse in a race, is you fluster them. And when you fluster them and you've got a 6-speed gearbox, and it's literally, what is a Formula One, gear journey's what? Probably 3 inches by 1.5 inches or something. It's so precise. It's such a small thing, that lever, just that the movement's so tiny. You can fluster people into making mistakes. And if they make mistakes, there's another one. In 1985, Senna he actually screwed in his final practice. He screwed a gear change coming down, and it was a bad gear change. I think he was trying to do a 5th to 3rd or something. So he was trying to miss a gear, and I think he dropped it into 2nd or even perhaps 1st. He felt the engine over rev for a second, got off the revs, tried to correct it, walked into the pits or drove into the pits and told them, look, I think I've over revved the engine and we ought to change it. They had a good look and they said, no. Look at him. He lasts about 5 minutes in the race. He effectively blows his own engine. So even the greats could make mistakes with those boxes. And I think probably you're right, Chris, right at the beginning. Greatest idea in the world. Mansell makes amazing overtaking maneuver. No one needs to leave the steering wheel alone, except now that they press loads and loads of buttons instead. But what does it really do in the long term? It robs you of a great motor race and potential overtaking at a place like Monaco. And in a road car, I have to say, I thought it was magic, but I just kept feeling in the 355 that I was being kicked in the back. And I know I shared this text with you, but I was very lucky in November 2011 to be driven by Felipe Massa in a 458 on the full Abu Dhabi Formula One circuit. It was one of the best evenings of my life because we went out in a 458 and then later in the Formula One 2-seat car. And I have to say, I still found it a bit blippy and clunky. And I remember going up the main straight, in a Formula One car, I think you're doing just shy of 200 miles an hour because it's about a mile long, isn't it? In Yas Marina. In the 458, I think we got to about 170.
All right.
Maybe a little bit less, but I remember, he was basically in top gear, and I remember that it was a downshift that felt a bit sort of oof, chuggy.
What noise did they make, Manish?
Sorry, am I doing my oof?
Yeah, I've heard that in a Ferrari as well. That noise, yeah.
You should go in a 430.
That was my noise. I was being kicked in the back by the strange downshift. So look, it's an incredible invention. It's here to live. And I think, Neil, just a final point is, Lola famously has, an automatic gearbox. And I have to say, I spent 18 months trying to find the manual 456M and, didn't find one. One did come out, of course, 7 months after I bought Lola, but I don't miss it in her. I think if you're just touring, it's a fabulous thing. It really, really is fabulous. Give me central London, 1st to 2nd, 2nd to 1st. 1st to London, 2nd to 1st. So I certainly don't miss it in town.
Yeah, agreed.
I think this is one of the most involved topics in the sort of world of the car nerd, people that love driving. And it's fascinating because I do vacillate greatly. Sometimes I reach different conclusions on a daily basis about this. Fundamentally, I believe, looking back, that the F1 gearbox was a sort of the benchmark piece of technology that migrated over from motorsport for all the right reasons. But the moment it was applied, we all should have gone, this should stay in racing because it's really good in racing. It doesn't add anything to the driving experience. But then you have to factor in that the majority of the customers for the cars at that moment were not, people that heel and toed and dreamed about steering feel. They were people that earned lots of money and wanted to buy a Ferrari that meant they didn't have to make asses of themselves with that stupid gated manual gearbox, which they didn't like. Most people that bought Ferraris thought their gearboxes were a total pain in the arse. So when presented with this very easy solution, and Ferrari presented it beautifully with these 2 massive paddles that were behind the steering wheel, up and down. It spoke to this, and this is a very powerful marketing message, that you feel like you're a racing driver on the road. It spoke to that, and there are far more people that buy Ferraris that are at that level of driving than the ones that are talking about, oh, I can't heel and toe properly because the brake pedal's a bit too high. I mean, let's face it, those are a minority. But I think they were originally really, really bad. And what undid a load of car makers, including Ferrari, was that there were huge software issues. If you left the car, most Ferraris don't get driven very often. If you left them behind, most early F1s just went into a sort of limp mode. So you came back and there was this weird sort of they had that Star Wars style little square sort of dot matrix screen, and it would just have that up on the screen to you saying, no, it's not happening today. So you had to phone the dealer. So the reason why it was 25 grand is that they clearly knew it was going to be a total pain in the arse. They needed to build in some hassle factor, I think, warranty factor. And also people didn't understand that it wasn't they thought that because you'd taken the lever away, it was an automatic gearbox like they had in their 7 Series. So you could just whack your throttle down, do whatever you wanted, but you didn't. You could if you caught the clutch before it had gone to its safe position, you could completely wreck the thing. And particularly on hill starts and stuff like that, the number of clutches that got lunched because people thought they had an automatic gearbox. That didn't come until the 458, obviously, with a DCT, which is technically, it's a dual clutch, but it behaves like an automatic. So those early ones, but they're odd. When you go back and revisit the cars, if there was no option, like my M5 Touring, I've driven the S85 car. I've driven manual converted cars that should be better, but they're not.
No.
Because you miss a ratio, and you also forget that as those early F1 gearbox cars, they were gearbox solutions applied to engines that have been developed for a manual gearbox. I sound like I'm getting nerdy now, but wear it. What happened was as the take up for these gearboxes, and let's call them single clutch automated manuals is what they are.
Exactly.
Hydraulically automated manuals. As the take-up became greater, so the car companies were incentivized to calibrate engines to work with those gearboxes, not the manual. So you suddenly go from early ones being, well, this is massive gaps in the gear ratios, the gear shift is slow, but as the technology gets better, the gear shifts get faster, and the engines begin to flatter those transmissions because they were developed, their torque curves, their power curves were developed to work with that transmission. And the V10 M5 is almost the ultimate example. It's not the greatest gearbox, but you put a manual in it and you lose 10% of the performance, and the experience changes. So I think it's a fascinating sort of point in history for the motor car. And then out of nowhere, just when the car makers are making this stuff work, they've got clutches that can work, they've got really fast gear shifts, and Ferrari gives us the 430 Scuderia, which is probably the best of those gear shifts. It's a really, really good, fast, it's really athletic, and also you've got a manual gearbox casing, so the gearbox is much lighter than an automatic.
Got fewer bits in it.
A car arrives that changes everything. It's called the Bugatti Veyron. And those of us that drive it go, well, everyone's talking about how fast this car is, but actually the real story here is this transmission, which we're told weighs more than a Mini, but it pre-selects gear up and down. Porsche tried it in the 962 and Walter had it in a Quattro S1 for a couple of months, and it's a revolution. I'm now going to ask you a question to test your nerdiness. The Veyron was the first application of DCT for a special car. What was the first normal car that had a DCT gearbox for sale in the UK or in Europe?
Been a VW group product. Skoda?
It was a TT with a V6 engine, 3.2 litres.
No. Okay, it wasn't a million miles. I was quite
We weren't far off. And I remember it being delivered to the office at Autocar. It actually answers a question I should have used on this podcast, what we should have used, which is, what's the car that's the most rubbish, that has the best single component, that shines? So this thing arrived and it had that awful wheezy 3.2 V6.
Yeah, it wasn't great.
It was, TT's nice with less weight, and it's a clever car, but it's not a sports car. And this gearbox was just off the scale, just amazing. And immediately the paddle shift was dead. And a few manufacturers persevered for a bit longer before they bought DCT, but really it was consigned to history, quite a short history when we look back. So automatics, I mean, my view of automatic gearboxes is so contorted by LJK Setright, because I used to read. My parents never had automatic gearboxes, and I rarely went in them. And both my parents had a very dim view of automatics. In fact, they judged people who had automatic gearboxes like they did people who had beards and watched certain channels on television. It's frightfully judgmental Middle England. Well, if you have an automatic gearbox, you're lazy, or you're there's something about you.
Something missing.
How fucking ridiculous is that? They used to think that, but they really did. So I never went in them, and used to read Car Magazine, and Zetrite would go on about how great they were.
Yes.
So when I first got the chance to drive one, I went back and I read a couple of Zetrite columns. So sounds ridiculous, but I did do this. He was obsessed with the fact that you could effectively create your own F1 or DCT situation if you could manually shift in an automatic gearbox. And really, BMW weren't offering that. Well, they were, but Mercedes and sort of Jag were the best at it at the time. So Jag had that J gate, and Mercedes you could nip it around the corner a bit. In fact, no, BMW you could, but the lever had to travel further, and it had those brushes. And we had the T-bar and the brushes.
Oh, the brushes!
Remember the brushes?
They were just the best. That just said somebody's thought about this, and it's just to love those brushes.
So you go out and you lock into a gear, and effectively, because you've taken out the torque converter, the next shift is a free shift. If you go 2, you've got a big weight.
Yeah.
But what he was saying was if you're working on an aero with 2 gears, you could shift between them quicker than you could in a manual.
Yeah.
And you could and your hands are back on the steering wheel quicker, and you didn't have to bother about a third pedal. So he was a great exponent of the automatic. I think 20% of it was logical and true, and the rest of it generated beautiful writing and a lot of letter inbox for the magazine. I don't want to spoil his legacy, but having now spent time around automatic gearboxes, he might have not been entirely right. But romantically, it was great. And also it made me curious about trying to make an automatic gear. Don't dismiss it. Try and make an automatic gearbox fun to drive.
Well, we've all done that, I think. We've all done that, haven't we? We've all attempted it. But
I've gone on too long there.
It's a pain in the arse.
But I do a really good automatic gearbox in the right car might be the best way for an engineer to demonstrate how clever they are. I just think they're brilliant. And I've had a couple of times, in fact, I had one. Cooper won't remember this. Chris Cooper drove me to, there's school drop off, and sometimes they get a bit punchy. Someone's just having a bit of a outside, as they do. They just use a very choice word, which is great when you're dropping your kids off at 8 in the morning, isn't it? So Mr. Cooper dropped me off to go and buy my little Alpina D3. And he and his car demonstrated the very best thing about a great automatic gearbox, which is when you've kicked down successfully and overtaken something, and the car has kicked down exactly the right number of gears that you want to kick down. It's just a telepathic link. It's worked out the way you drive. So he overtook something, and it probably went down 2 or 3 gears, and we snuck past, and he pulled in. As he removed his foot from the throttle, it gave him that last upshift to bring the revs down just when he asked the car to do it.
Yeah.
And when you're that tuned into an automatic, it's not about kicking down. It's when you back off and it doesn't hang there. When it hangs there and your brain goes, I know there's another gear. I know. Come on, there's one more gear. Get into that last gear because I know the fuel consumption is going to go down. It's going to smooth the engine off, and it doesn't shift. He lifted off, and just as he lifted, you could feel it. It went into 8th. Now how do they engineer that? It's amazingly clever.
Yeah, they're clever, and that is why now you'd have to say those PDK, those double clutch gearboxes, they're really, really bloody good.
And we came into this from a message that Manish wrote about having a ride in a 458 that he felt had rough upshifts. Well, we won't go into that. That's probably another discussion. We need to move on, but. The amazing thing and the perverse thing about DCT was that it came to a marketplace that had become used to a very harsh paddle shift, upshifts and downshifts. In fact, it was used as a sort of marketing tool that the sportier experience was having your spine realigned by bad gear shifts. So when they put these DCTs into the 458 and the SLS, the engineers had to think about adding in harshness and badness so that people felt they actually had a sporty gear shift. I mean, it's a bit like saying, well, we want this wristwatch to be like it was in 1840, so we're going to make sure it doesn't tell the time. Absolutely. It was totally bizarre. They've sort of got over that now, but gearboxes, anyhow, they're in fact they're going to come into the discussion in a minute as well, because they're a big part of what we're going to talk about next. So I will talk about gearboxes again, but I want I want to go to Manish, because everyone knows that Manish loves Formula One and has this encyclopedic knowledge. It means he can call upon what happened on one corner in Mexico 40 years ago, as he just did, which we love. We're talking about why we should all be going to Le Mans. How does a Formula One aficionado feel about Le Mans, and would you like to go? And why should you be going, Manish?
I would love to go, actually, and I really should have gone a bit in the last 5 years, and there are two really good professional reasons why. Firstly, I made a film called Heroes. It was the first film I directed, and it's a film where 4 racing drivers meet at an English stately home, spend a day and a night together, and they talk to each other about their lives. And one of those was Tom Christensen. So it took us a while to make this, and to talk Tom into it, I went to Hobro. I went to his home. He had me over. It's a complicated journey getting to Hobro, because Denmark's made of lots of little islands. So you have to do a lot of flying, or you have to do lots of boating. And he's got the most beautiful house. He actually lives on Tom Christensen Avenue. So
how cool is that?
It only gets cooler. So Tom, it turns out, just 8 days younger than me. He's born on July the 7th, 1967, and he is the nicest guy, and he's quite OCD. He'd be very at home on this podcast. He made me a coffee, and I didn't know whether he was rebuilding the coffee machine as he was doing it. He was mucking up. It was the best coffee ever. But we really got on like a house on fire. And of course, he did the movie. But that day, he said, "Come down to my little. It's like a little treasure trove. You go down these stairs in his house." And he has the most important cars of his life. And I know Neil shared that video with us. There's the
Rolex film,
Rolex video at the moment. And he has a 67 Volkswagen camper. It's beautiful, absolutely restored. But next to it was his 2013 Le Mans winning Audi, the last one. And I was looking at this thing, and he said, "Go on, get in." And I said, "Are you being serious?" And he said, "Go on, get in." Open the thing up. I've never been in a car where my heels were at the same level as my shoulders. And right in the middle, you are literally, it's bathtub horizontal, this car. It really is. You're very, very low. Your feet are much higher than you think. And there's nothing high-tech about this sort of aluminium box, which was just to your left. And it's got just big toggle switches on for lights and things. No one's going to make a mistake in the car. And then I remember Tom telling me about, he talks about it famously, Le Mans endurance racing. It's about being physically incredibly strong. It's about rhythm. But he says where it's so different, because Tom was very close to getting into Formula One, never quite made it for various reasons. I had really everything to do with budget and the lack of a beaten trail from Denmark into motor racing compared to all the Germans. But Tom said to win at Le Mans, in terms of what it feels like emotionally, it's really unparalleled. The exhaustion after 24 hours, the bonding, these two, your teammates are not some random, they're not like your team, certainly not like your teammates in Formula One. They're not like your teammates in anything else. You're handing over this precious thing to your teammates, and you're getting it back, and you're working in the most coordinated way to go and win this thing. And he said the art is in the overtaking of the slower cars. He said, Formula One, you've got 20 people, they're all calibrated to be about that much within each other's abilities, and the cars are so. And he said, but you've got multiple classes. So you've got a Porsche going at 160 while you're doing 240. If you back off and let him into the chicane first, you've lost 4 seconds, 5 seconds. And he said, do that at night and do that in the rain. And in my mind, absolutely blew. And the other reason why I'm desperate to go to Le Mans, a script that I've talked about before, Bentley Boys. When I wrote that is a story about Le Mans. It's a story about very, very brave men who came out of the First World War and who were transitioning, frankly, into the Second. So there's a really good historical reason, I think, also to go there. You know, you feel the ghosts of these people. So I'm beyond it. And the final thing is obviously the film Le Mans. I love the idea of pretending to be Steve McQueen for 24 hours, walking up to a sexy French woman and saying, "Is this seat taken?" And they're looking me up and down going, "No, it is not. Please sit down," and having my piece of cheese. So 3 perfect reasons, I think, to go to Le Mans.
Neil, you've been to Le Mans more than all of us put together. It's been a huge thing for you. Tell us why you're addicted to it.
Mainly because I'm older than you lot, unfortunately. Although I'm only 3 months older than Manish, I think. Look, I'm pissed off I'm not going this year for numerous reasons, mainly bullshit reasons. I'm not going, but I'm going to be watching with my mates the race at home. I've been going since '99, off and on, mainly on. Also, Classic Le Mans 2, which is also magnificent. There's so many. We could do a whole podcast on this. It's the pinnacle of motorsport. It's Mecca. It's Bethlehem. It's Bohemian Rhapsody. Anything that's peak stuff. It's a 4-wheel version of the TT Isle of Man. And there's so many things, from the excitement of getting off the British motorway services into the French motorway and just feeling the relaxation of driving through France and service stations and seeing the signposts and seeing Alençon and Les Sarthe and Le Mans and the little coffees in the service stations and the giggling with your mates and the pretend F1 starts that you do away from the from the motorway things, and just the sort of general
go wrong.
The general sort of male camaraderie and general dicking around, seeing Haribo that you've never seen before, and then arriving at Le Mans. As you say, Manish, pretending you're Steve McQueen, driving into that car park underneath the cathedral early in the morning, the heat, the dust, the smell of France. I mean, the whole place smells very differently, doesn't it? Dinner in the old town, a few too many beers, some food that you don't really know what it was, but a creme brulee afterwards, a random taxi back to your tent or your container that's been converted into a room that's 650 degrees when you wake up at 5 a.m, forgetting the toothpaste, walk into the grandstand, sweltering hot, forgetting the sun cream, and then just seeing the cars. And it's just everything, and the sheer, sunset at Arnage Corner with a box of chips and a beer, there's nowhere like it in the world, actually. It's phenomenal, and I'm now even more pissed off. I'm not going, and maybe I will get up and Friday night and just bloody drive there. I know Mr. Harris.
You're coming with me. You're coming with me, whether you like it. Just throw one of your kids in the car. You come down and see me.
I know Mr. Harris is racing at 9 a.m. on Saturday morning in a Ford Mustang. I've got plenty of, including yourself, Chris, lots of mates there. It is the pinnacle of everything that we love, and everyone, honestly, including you, Manish, everyone should go once.
I think, I've not been as many times as I should, because I reached a point in my life, rather spoilt, that I don't like going to race circuits unless I'm racing. I'm not that keen on watching other people race. I'll watch, the best Formula 1 drivers, but maybe I've been a bit sniffy about it. And also, it's a race I always wanted to do, and I failed to do it, and I won't do the 24 hours now. But it was always my life goal, and a bit of me will always view life as a failure because I haven't done it. Because I loved it. I was obsessed by it as a kid, more than I was Formula 1. Chris, why should we all go to Le Mans?
For all the reasons that Neil has said.
Yeah, pretty comprehensive list, that, Neil.
There is something peculiarly still quite British about it. Maybe it's, years ago, it used to be described as a British motor race taking place in northern France. And still now, in terms of the the spectator and the community that goes. It's so convenient to get there. It's a nice drive. I haven't been for a long time. And a bit like you, Chris, part of that, and I kind of used to have this sort of feeling about some of the Goodwood events, is I'd be frustrated to be the wrong side of the fence. I mean, we're not professional drivers, but we've had our moments, and the chances. I actually gave up. I passed the chance to race there twice. In the early 2000s, I was offered a drive in a Celine, which was a big American GT1, really, really proper Le Mans GT car. And then I can't remember whether it was one of the TVRs or the Morgan. It would have been early 2000s, before 2005. Mates of mine I was racing with were going and racing these things, because in those days it was, I mean, crikey, it might have been 2002. Somebody might have said, if you got 30 grand, there's a seat going in whatever it was. It wasn't a Mose, it would have been a Celine. I thought, I didn't, people don't start motor racing when they can afford it. People start motor racing well before they can afford it. And I started motor racing and I couldn't afford it. Just ask Lynn. We got married and I started motor racing. So regrets are unhelpful, but I do wish I could have turned that clock back, because the amount of money you need to take now is out of all proportion. And even in the AMs now, Ben Keating, I think Ben's racing this weekend, an American, to describe him as an American car dealer somewhat underplays who he is. Look up Ben Keating. Underplays who he is and his capabilities and his success, and how bloody fast he is. He's really, really, he's a bronze driver, but he's bloody, bloody fast. So for all those reasons, I have another reason. We may never have it as good as it is now. The number of manufacturers there, I know some of the aficionados and a lot of the teams get fussy about the BOP, the balance of performance. But if there wasn't a BOP, there'd be no event, because somebody would bring along, a weaponized version of something, and every other manufacturer say, hey, we got no chance, we're going to give up. Same in GT racing. The BOP has brought a lot of manufacturers in. And now it's so close. It makes, bizarrely, the intensity of the competition and how flat out they are, it almost makes Formula One look like an endurance race of their tyre saving. Don't get me started on Formula Pirelli again. So, I'm going to make one small plea because it's next weekend, for the Nürburgring 24 hours. I think everyone should always go once to the Nürburgring 24 hours. Some people have decried it from the top of the professional world. Oh, it's a bit of a club race. But that's why it's amazing, because right at the front, it's as competitive as LM GT3 and at Le Mans. But it is open for people like Chris and I to race in it. Even now, we can still go there now. You've got to take a few more tests and do a few more races to get in. But when we did it 20 million years ago, you could just pitch up. As a spectator event, it's extraordinary. 400,000 people there, 500,000 people over the weekend, making camps. There'll be swimming pools filled with beer, and Germans with that haircut swimming in a child's swimming pool full of beer. They'll make their own grandstands. You go up the hill from all the way up to Stahlstrecken, just before the carousel. Somebody at that corner at the top, that sort of big, long, quite fast 180, there'll be a scaffolding structure they built with a sofa on the top. They spent a week building this thing. If it rains, which it quite often does there, there'll just be mudslides. People will just be caked in mud the whole weekend. Between Stahlstrecken and the carousel, that was a bit, certainly years ago, where British marshals would volunteer to go and marshal that part of the circuit. And you see these signs a bit like Checkpoint Charlie. You're now entering the British sector. And when we were there, weren't so many British cars necessarily when we were first doing it. You feel a little sense of pride, thinking, I need to drive extra fast because these guys have come all this way. One of the years, Chris, when you were doing that amazing thing with the Gen 2 997 GT3 RS, basically a road car, which drove to the ring, drove back from the ring, and finished 11th overall, whatever it was.
13th.
13th overall. So Chris wasn't with us that year. I got on the run up to Starstruck in that very, very, very fast, not quite straight bit. I got pinged by one of the Audi GT3 cars, and there were a whole bunch of people. I was at the next circuit. A whole bunch of people dragged the car behind the barrier. They had a workshop. They brought their own tools. So they set to pulling the bodywork off the tyre, trying to do a little bit of tracking. It's extraordinary. So do both of them. They are life-affirming events.
I think, sometimes when I bring up the rear in these discussions, they've been so comprehensively and emotionally deconstructed that it's difficult for me to add. But I've just spent a few days at Le Mans, and I'm very lucky to be doing a support race. I have a few rules in my life. One of which is if you ever get the chance, or you're offered the chance to drive the full Le Mans circuit, regardless of the vehicle, you take it. It's not a circuit that's in existence year round. It's the Bugatti circuit, as they call it, which then extends out onto the public roads around Le Sauf. So it's not there. It's like Bathurst. And it's such a privilege to drive it because people think it's just a couple of straights. It's not. It has real rhythm. It's a place where you can really go flat out. Yesterday, I was going along in a Mustang with no windows, doing 169 miles an hour up against a wall, and it's you feel like nothing else. And then you brake hard into the chicanes, and it's all about managing how much entry you take in and just getting the car up on its toes and whether you can get the exit speed just right. And you just feel special. I'm remarkably privileged. So I'm back here because I've got to do some work. I'm racing with the amazing Sir Chris Hoy, who is in qualifying as we record this. He's doing one race. I'm doing one race as well. And it's in a dark horse Ford Mustang, no sniggering at the back when you see my picture. So I think what's different about Le Mans is that when I see people, we're all good people watchers, the four of us, actually. I think if we have one good skill, the four of us, we are interested in what people do and how they conduct themselves and what matters to them. When you watch people go into a Formula One race, they're going to watch a Formula One race. When you see people going to Le Mans, it's a bit of a pilgrimage. It's more. They're going for a longer period of time. They take more stuff. They're willing to put up with far more inconvenience and lower quality surroundings because they're there for a bigger event. The scope of Le Mans is ridiculous. I mean, Formula One feels like a big paddock, but this is different. You've got 5 or 6 huge support races. There was a lovely man came up to me yesterday who runs the Porsche Sprint Cup, which is modern Carrera Cup cars, they run a Sprint Cup in France and a few European nations. And he was a lovely man. He listened to the podcast. He said he loves everything. He said, we're doing quite well. We've got quite a good grid. We've only got 69 cars out today. Now, just having a space for 69 Carrera Cup cars and their technicians means you've got the biggest paddock in Western Europe. And then the Ford have turned up with 44 Mustangs, which they put on one 747 and flew over there.
Wow.
So I think there's the scope of it. I think there's a sense of what the drivers and the teams are about to undertake. And I think we've done a few 24-hour races, a couple of us. One thing Manich says really resonated, which is when you've succeeded in a 24-hour race, the emotional exchange between the team members and the drivers is more powerful because you've done something that lasted longer, and also because you're so knackered, you're febrile, you're sort of emotionally a bit broken. And what happens after that is an enormous crash, and the days afterwards can be terrible. I've done really stupid things after successful 24-hour races, like I've gone on benders that I shouldn't have done, because you get quite low. You're like, fuck, there's a huge hole in my life here. You also, more often than not, if you're a professional driver, are a teammate with someone you've been competing with all your life. So you have a very confusing, again, emotional situation where someone that you want to beat, you now want to do well. How odd's that? What other sports are that? It's a bit like the Ryder Cup, I suppose. It's a bit like the Ryder Cup. I also love how French it is. It is very, still an English race in Northern France, yeah. But the ACO is. I mean, do you remember when Murray Walker coined, or someone said to him, describe Jean Alesi as mercurial, it'll work, and he couldn't leave it alone after that. Murray couldn't say Alesi without prefacing it with the mercurial, right? The ACO is the most mercurial organization in the world. They're not there necessarily to help you, but it's their toy set, and they'll do what the F they want with it. And I begrudgingly respect it. So I just love how French it is. If you walk in, there'll be a solution to something that's been solved by every other race organizer in the world, but the ACA will do it a bit differently. And it's just French. And they're so belligerent about it, but I love it. And I have to say, the marshalling this year is the best I've ever experienced in a motor race. It's the organisation. They cut it up into 9 zones, the circuit, and as a driver, it's brilliant. You get a single waved yellow, and then the next marshal post is going to be double wave yellows, and in our race, code 80. It just works so well. They're so efficient. I have to say, it's a circuit that if ever you get the chance to drive it, I sound very sport. You have to take it, because if you pretend that you're Steve McQueen when you arrive at the circuit, is this seat taken? When you're going down the Mulsanne straight, you're like, I've really arrived now. You could be in a Mini. It doesn't matter. You're still going down the Mulsanne straight. It also has the circuit with the greatest corner names, doesn't it? I mean, aren't they magnificent? Absolutely magnificent. Bring, 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 bring. There has been an accident at Arnage. There has been an accident at Arnage.
But if you get there early, if you get there like Thursday, you're all excited and you go and have omelette and chips at that cafe on the corner at Arnage, and you're watching all the burnouts in the Granada 2.8 IXs with 9 blokes in the back. And then, the circuit's open. I think we can go and drive the circuit. And you go down to Porsche Curves or wherever it is, Arnage, and you can just have 2 or 3 miles on the circuit. And your heart rate is going at about 120 beats per minute, just because you're physically on the circuit, and you park up on the grass and you see all the caterums and the TVRs and all the groups. It's wonderful. And I think
everyone that's been there many times, and I have been far more times than I want to remember actually, has got stories when it went wrong. I'll share one with you. This is one of my favourites. For some reason, Steve Sutcliffe had his stag do there. What could possibly go wrong? I mean, most of it's unrepeatable, but it was an absolute shower of shit. Everything that could go wrong did. My favourite bit was Colin Goodwin, my lovely friend Colin, who we drove out there in an Audi A8 W10, the sort of W12, the first shape one, not the second. They never made it in right-hand drive. It was a left-hand drive car, and it had an extended wheelbase with 2 champagne flutes in the back. So me and my other half were using that as a camper van. We just slept in it because the back seat was so big. And Colin came out in his recently home-built Chevrolet El Camino. So it's 7.3 litre sort of muscle car with a flatbed at the back. So it's a van. So it's a flatbed truck, or a ute, or a bucky, as they call it in Africa. And we all drove out in convoy. I went with Colin for when his car broke down, and the Audi broke down on the way there, and the Camino made it. Because that W12 engine couldn't cool itself. It overheated on the periphery. Anyhow, Goodwin got it wrong. He was pretty much shapeless before the start of the race. So we got to the start of the race, and he's gone, lads, I've got to check out for a few hours. He was absolutely poleaxed because we'd been on it since the morning. He woke up and he parked his car sort of up. You know, in those days, there were no police. So if you couldn't find a parking space, you sort of put your car half up a curb, didn't you? Just leave it there.
Right. Yeah.
So he's semi-abandoned El Camino. He woke up with it moving. And he came out, and the worst rare, and there was just, I think, a Dutch couple that they had a small table and 2 chairs sitting in the back of his El Camino having some food.
Everything can happen.
Not to recreate that.
And so when you finish, can you go? But no, and that's maybe the other thing. Le Mans generates stories. It generates stories. And on that front, you might have seen an Instagram post I put out, which is a little bit random, but friend of mine, Charlie Turner from Top Gear days, he's the highest quality individual I work with, I think, at the BBC. He's a lovely man. He's just started a new charity. They're soft launching it, and it's with the guys that founded Movember, so they know about how to get traction for a charity. It's called The Refuel, at The Refuel, at the.refuel. And it's good. It's people are trying to work out what it is, but actually it's about the power of conversation, particularly for blokes. Where's the place you find easiest to talk to a mate if you've got some issues or if life's a bit difficult? It's the motor car. It's a great place to have a little mutual therapy with a mate. So they're starting something now. It's a real, and also you're facing forwards. You haven't got to look at the bugger when you say the things you don't want to say. So Go to the app, the Refuel. It's soft launch now, but next year there'll be a big push, and it'll be about, don't drive to them on your own. Take a mate and talk all the way there. Don't listen to music. Talk. So moving on. That's at the Refuel, and they've got a little space there. So look at their website and have a look. Here we go. Favorite estate car. I mean, this is not fair. You can't.
What have we got?
Estate cars are the best cars. You can't have a favorite estate car. It's like saying favorite child.
Yeah.
You got 4 dogs. What's your favorite dog? And Neil wrote this. You should know better, Neil Clifford. You can go first.
Look, favorite is a different word to best. And I think that's right. That's very important.
Yeah, always true.
I could have written coolest, because the best probably is whatever new BMW Touring there is with the smallest engine. But my favourite, which actually I don't own, so it's a bit stupid of me really. It has to be Mercedes. Can I just put that out there? In my view, it has to be Mercedes. It has to be automatic, and I think my favourite would be, and I've owned these and sold these, and when I own one, I don't know why I've got it because I don't drive it, and when I don't own one, I want to buy one. A W123 280 on a Y reg, and as weird a spec as you can find. Steel wheels, manual sunroof.
Yeah, not the Coke bottle ones. Yeah.
No, steel wheel.
How about sand beige with sand beige wheel centres?
Oh.
Yes, I would go. There was a lovely one that just sold at Edward Hall Mercedes, the blue, the non-metallic mid blue, with the chrome roof rack, the velour, but with the rare AC. It's all about spec, isn't it? So you've got velour, which is, I think, the thinking man's leather, and then you've got AC, which you never really use. It's just lovely to have AC because you imagine you're going to use it because you're driving to Morocco, but you don't. You drive to Marlow. Do you know what I mean? But you got.
I always get those mixed up.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm in bloody Morocco again. I just wanted to go shopping.
Cars are as much about the imaginary journey than the actual journey, aren't they? So I think, I could easily go, I can't remember what code it is. It's S204 or something. The C63 Mercedes.
Yeah.
There's some very cool Mercedes estates, very low key. I'd have it in white with those very fine spiky wheels. They only come out of Japan. I don't know whether they were, right-hand drive, but Japan, but those sort of dealers that, Seymour Pope, but I would go 1, 2, 3 Mercedes, velour, AC, chrome roof rack, steels.
Chris Cooper.
And that's exactly what I had. That's exactly what I had. I've had, you probably know, I had about 2 hours sleep last night because I drive back up country. So I've done this about 15 minutes this morning. And I printed out our agenda, and the only thing I wrote about was this subject. And I've covered the whole bit of paper with all the stuff I wanted to say. First thing I wrote was, how do you choose your favorite estate car? It's like choosing your favorite puppy. I just want all of them. Estate cars, wagons, are about adventure and family and friends. And it's the promise of what you can do in an estate car. And you're right, favorite isn't necessarily best or necessarily coolest.
True.
I think there can be cool cars which aren't your favorite. And I went through, I was in Cornwall for only a couple of days in the end. I found myself following a Volvo 940 estate.
JK.
It's not very cool. It's probably not great, but Jesus, it just looked so lovely. It's got that beautiful proportion. It's quite wide, and the glass house is quite high. So it doesn't look too ungainly. If you put it on stilts, it would be a silly SUV. But as a wagon, it was brilliant. And it just says, this is how you do an estate car, like the 850 did. The 850 was a couple of years before, but the 900, I just think, is the epitome of, Volvo said, this is an estate car, stop all your nonsense. That's what it should be like. Any Peugeot estate up to the 505, any Peugeot estate, steel wheels. The 123, it's S123, I think you said, Neil, 182 BHP. I remember reading about the road test of that in Motor Magazine when I was a wee nipper, thinking, what adventures, before I could drive. I just think that is the adventures you could have. You could go to Scotland, you could go skiing, you could put stuff, you could meet people at the airport and pick up all their stuff and put it on that lovely chrome roof rack with those chrome roof rails. It's got a big boot.
It is about imagining.
Mercedes, it's never going to stop. Oh, it's just so lovely. There have been some howlers, estate car wise. Do you remember the Avon re-engineered Jaguar XJ6 estate? We'll put a picture up. It was worse than a hearse. But some of the coolest ones, there was, I remember reading about it a while ago. It would have been, I think, in the 90s when newspapers were still printed and distributed. There was a little business that distributed, I think, the FT around Europe. And they had a fleet of CX wagons extended. They might have been 6 wheels. I might have got that bit wrong.
It was a Parisian publisher.
That's right.
Distributor of papers, and they used to drive them physically 190 kilometers an hour to the south of France. They covered France.
That's basically it. I mean, Google the Citroen CX, the newspaper wagon. Fantastic story. Amazing.
Brussels. It was Brussels.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. Yeah. So, the first one I wrote down was...
He made a transporter version.
He did.
Could carry a CX on the back of it.
That's right, he did. Yeah. So I think if we ask this question this afternoon, I'll come up with a different answer, but it's very hard to walk past the S123, S124, S123. It's kind of the first estate that I thought, that would do everything. I'd never want another car. What an adventure.
Manish, your favourite estate car? Bearing in mind
it's a bit of group think. It could only be that, really. And I think I've mentioned it before. There's a rather well-known actor who doesn't live too far away from me, and he has a Burgundy 123. I've got this wrong on this pod before. I can't remember whether it's I think it's a 300. Which is it? A 300? It's not the TD. It's the 300. Is it an E?
TE.
No.
It'd have to be a 124 if it was going to be a 300.
It's not a 124. Well, it's definitely a 123, and it's
280 max.
So it's Burgundy.
They did a 300 diesel.
It has tan velour inside. It has the steel roof racks. But the thing that I love about it is it has a permanent dog basket in the back.
Oh.
Just permanent. And it's really immaculate, this car, whether he off-street parks it or leaves it on the street. It's a joy to walk past. But just as we were talking about that, I remember, didn't the Sultan of Brunei...
I know, Neil's just dropped off. He'll come back. You carry on.
So, just while I was thinking about it, didn't the Sultan of Brunei have 4 Ferrari 456s turned into... The slightly ungainly, in my opinion, slightly ungainly estate. But I mean, I guess if you have the money and you love a Ferrari 456 that much, you turn it into an estate.
The estate car is fascinating for me. So this changes on a daily basis, like Chris Cooper. I love most of them. Very few I don't like. There's one area of the estate car that I think people might identify with. Is that when I was younger, the estate car was mum's car and the other car was dad's car. That's very sexist, but I'm afraid that's the way it was. Mum had an estate because she had to cart kids and clobber and dogs around, and dad had a nice Audi Quattro. Because of the curious nature of my mother being the better driver, going in the estate car was always more fun. So I identified these estate cars as being quite dynamic, which is quite strange. But it also feeds into the fact that I really wanted my mum to have a really nice estate car, which she never did. It wasn't because he was mean. It was because the thing just had wet dogs in it all day long. So we always had the L-line model because my father refused. I mean, it ran it for 3 years till it was dead. So we had a Vauxhall Cavalier, Renault 18. We had a VW Passat before, and we had an Audi, I think, an Audi 80 in the late 70s. There was a Triumph. They all just got smashed to bits until the Renault Espace came along, which changed everything. That's a different discussion. The Renault Espace was a brilliant vehicle, and we had several of those, and we loved them. But there was probably one car that I really wanted her to have, and it actually we got it after my father passed away. I thought, you know what, let's get her a great car, because she hasn't got, I don't know how long she's around for. So we bought her an E39 BMW Alpina B10 3.3 Touring in silver with a manual gearbox. In those days, people didn't want the stripes. Bought it for her new, and just took it to her house and said, "There you go. You've always had estate cars, but you've never had a really fast one. What do you think of this?" And she was 68 years old, and proceeded to accumulate enough points to be banned within about 4 months, I think it was. And then protested the fact that she had done nothing wrong. And I can remember going down the M5 south, going to Cornwall, and I was doing, let's say, a speed that would get you in trouble, and she came past me doing at least $120, with these two dogs looking out the back of it. They were thinking, this is going quite well. So I won't repeat all the reasons. They're just about, I suppose, and this is so misguided. If I see an estate car, I think I probably would like the person more than if they drove a saloon car. Isn't that awful? But
I think those are words to live by.
Yeah. So now Neil is literally walking to get on a plane now. I'm sure he's thinking, how cool would it be if I can actually broadcast from the seat of an aircraft? But it's not going to work because he'll keep cutting out. So we're going to carry on whilst Neil does his thing. And if he doesn't come back, we apologise. So I've been at Le Mans for the last couple of days. And the question I get asked most is, will you be at the Festival of Speed, the Goodwood Festival of Speed? The answer is almost certainly not, because I'm away. But I think we all have to acknowledge that the Goodwood Festival of Speed is not the Festival of Speed. It's the de facto British motor show, isn't it? That's what it is. If you want to see the greatest concentration of all car things in Northern Europe, it's the best show. And K&N will be there with a stand full of great things, including a touring car. So go and have a look, and go and surprise yourself with what K&N fitments there are. I still keep looking at the website and thinking, why do they make them for C63s? But people do fit them, so get out there, because it's a wonderful thing to do. Give yourself induction noise, because induction noise is for you and doesn't piss off other people. So my two learned colleagues who've both been to FOS, as it's known, where would you park your car? Oof. And how would you walk around? How do you navigate your way around such a busy show? Difficult question, I know. Chris Cooper.
So I used to shy away from the Festival of Speed. And in fact, until 2021, I'd intended to go in 2020, but that was the COVID year. Until 2021, I'd never been. I'd never been. For the reason we talked about.
Revival then? Was that your thing?
Say again?
Was the revival your thing?
No, I mean, similar reasons, actually, because it was that point where I didn't want to go to a motor racing or motorsport event when I was the wrong side of the fence. You just feel a bit frustrated I wish I could. Anyway, so I thought, okay, everyone raves about it and it should be absolutely my thing. And I love it. I really love it. So the boys and I go with some of their mates and some of my mates. Ideally, you go for a couple of days. There's so much to see. It can get quite busy. If it's wet, it's great because you see people slithering up the hill. If it's dry, it's great because you can see people really, really trying up the hill. I don't think it matters where you park. You can park, if you pay a little bit more money, you've got the right car, you can park in one of those car parks that's quite closer. But there's something to be said from parking in one of the public ones where you got in the beautiful grounds of Goodwood, walking through the trees, and you think, I can't see anything. And suddenly the whole thing opens up as you come through the trees. There is so much to see.
You also get to do what we all love doing, is to walk past an amazing load of cars. There's always, you'll be walking along and suddenly there'll be a Pantera and a Countach stuck in a field. You'll think this only happens at Goodwood.
Yeah, it is. Exactly. And I think it is still true that our heroes, past and present, are still so accessible. So, and there are people that we know and that all of us will know from the motoring world and motor racing, and you'll see lots of mates. And even though there's a squillion people there, you still seem to meet everybody you want to meet and bump into people you think, I haven't seen you in years and years and years. So just walking through those paddocks of all those lovely cars, the racing cars, the peculiar, the Edwardian cars, the Beast of Turin, all that lovely stuff, the smells. The one thing you'll never get, and it reminded me of the conversation we had about Le Mans and the smell of France and the smell of Britain in France, is the smell of Goodwood. Castrol, ask your granddad about Castrol if you're under 111 years old. And the smell of everything and just the sights, the people, it's just, I can't wait. It's about, where are we now? 12th of June. It's about 5 weeks away, 4 or 5 weeks away. I can't wait.
So part of my crib sheet is time of day is quite important at Goodwood. It's worth getting up a bit earlier.
It is.
Because honestly, half an hour can make all the difference. It's a massive event, hundreds of thousands of people. So get up with the Sparrows. Do a Neil Clifford, as we'd say. He's had to knock off because his plane's just taken off, but not private jet. It was a Ryanair, just to let you know. So if you get up a bit earlier and do a Neil, go and have a couple of espressos and take a lazy drive. There's something really lovely about being at Goodwood when it's just opened.
Yes.
It's quiet. And my Lord, does it fill up quickly. It's a bit like going to a cove in Cornwall when it's all sandy and you come back an hour later and it's a swirling mass of water. You think, well, that looks a bit different. So go early. And also don't try and leave when everyone else leaves. So either, if you're doing a 2-day, leave early on the second day. I'm talking 3, 4, get everything done. Or when everyone starts to walk out, go and find somewhere, sit down and read a magazine for an hour, or go and talk to someone, because that will save you so much hassle. Or, as I did, 2 years on the trot, I went on my motorcycle. Now, if you want to feel smug, filtering on a motorcycle when you go through Chichester and all the dual carriageways are a bit rammers and you can just go through, you feel quite smug. Manish, what motor car engine would you most like to hear go up the Goodwood driveway?
I think it's a simple answer. It's the one that we didn't get here. It's the Brabham BT50, the turbocharged one. But Sebastian Vettel tried to borrow that from Bernie. It's an absolutely true story, this. So Seb was there a couple of years ago. I remember Bernie calling me saying, but he said, I want to run your BT50 with my synthetic fuel. And Bernie said to him, yeah, we want to run that for all your life. You're not doing it. And that was that I would love to. That for me was the turbo supercar. It wasn't Senna's championship winning car, but that BT50 when it came out with the Parmalat stickers, the Santal, it was such a beautiful, with Piquet's little helmet in it. I'd actually just love to see Nelson Piquet full chat going up that hill in that BT50. That would make me very, very happy.
So there you go. FOS is coming up. K&N is our partner on these matters. We'll put up some links to their social media now. They've got a full team. They've got some really good presenters, actually, that are working there over the weekend. I think it's Thursday through to Sunday. So tune in and look at their content.
We'll go and say
hello.
hello.
Might be there, some of us. I'm a bit busy, but if you do see me, please ignore me because I'll be looking at the ground, running around, trying to not do a million selfies. No, I'm joking. Come and talk to me. I'll smile. I love all people. So, Chris Cooper, can you go with your 2-car garage,
yes.
please?
So, Manish, you suggested this. Would you like to read it out, Manish? Because this reaffirms us as the podcast of the people.
Go on, Manish, read it out.
All right. You are an architect who has just finished a dream commission for a Hampstead billionaire. He is so happy with your creation, he has given you £125,000 bonus brackets after tax. Your design work reflects the best of the past, but also of the present. You have a wife who wants an SUV and 2 sporty young boys, 10 and 12. You also have a love of 1970s cars. Pick an SUV and a 2-seater.
Despite the relative inaccessibility of this for myself, and I suspect most of our audience, I actually thought this was quite interesting because it kind of provoked, it goes back to the estate conversation we had a minute ago. There's something about a 1970, probably late 60s, but a 1970s Jeep Cherokee Chief or a Wagoneer. So pre-wood, so no wood, steel sort of hubcaps for the wheels. And the Cherokee was, I think, the two-door version. Cherokee Chief was two-door version. Somebody will correct me if I'm wrong. There's something very, very simple and lovely about that beautiful Jeep shape. And I reckon that would be, I mean, Jeep would argue that was the original SUV. I quite like that. And I don't know what that would be, you know, who knows? I can tell myself that it would fit within the budget. Because if you want the best modern two-seat convertible, it's got to be a Porsche Boxster 4-litre S.
Yep.
There's no substitute. So I'd have this wonderful, lovely 1970. I kind of torn between, is it a Wagoneer or the Cherokee? I like the simplicity of the two-door shape of that big wagon SUV and a Porsche Boxster 4-litre S. That's what I do.
I'm going to go next. So I know it's. I just love. I don't know what suffix it is. It's not a Velar, but an early range. I like that light blue color with the sandy beige interior. The sort of,
Yeah.
I just think it's a lot. And I want teddy bear. I don't want vinyl. I want.
You don't want the
furry.
Palomino. You want
I want the furry
teddy,
stuff in there. And nothing like that. One of the greatest sounding engines at low revs is that Buick V8 in a Range Rover. I don't know whether they tuned those twin tailpipes when they came out the side. Well, sort of they come out the back, but at an angle, don't they? Whether they tuned that noise. But when you hear a Range Rover of that era just pull away and rev to 1500 RPM, sexy sound. So sexy sounding low rev engines.
Yeah.
That's another point of discussion. So I'd have to have one of those. I just think they're stunning. And I know they've only got 2 doors, but I'm going to allow myself that.
It's cool.
Sports cars. I've vacillated hugely on this. But Chris has taken my thunder away. The 4-litre Boxster, by the way, you can only order, I think, for another month or 2. Then it goes.
It must be nearly ending.
So if you're vacillating, it's the last of a car that's not coming back.
No.
And it is so good to drive. It's so complete. And if you bought one in sort of Viper green with black bucket seats, you'd have something to remember yourself by. I'm gonna say, curiously, that right now I'm more into hot hatchbacks, and I use them as sports cars. So the use case for the hot hatchback is that, and I've just read an edition of Car Magazine from 1988 where they took the Lotus Esprit and tested it against a 205 GTI for 5,000 miles, and the 205 pretty much matches the supercar as a driving experience.
That's a very good comparison. Yeah,
I'm going to say So I'm going to save some money on it. I want the best 205 GTI 1.9 with an MI16 engine conversion and no sunroof. It's probably $100,000. So it's going to have it done well. And when everyone says, why didn't you buy a sports car? I'm going to say, get in the passenger seat and I'll show you why. Manish.
I'm going to go new with the SUV. And I had a little plan, but a chap called Carl Cordier, he does a lot of looking after of Lola, and he actually had a much better idea, and it was the new Alfa Stelvio for the wife.
Okay.
I think the 2.9 turbo, it's a sexy looking SUV, be a bit unusual. I think Carl quite likes them in green. I quite like these things in blue, but that's what I would go for modern. But 70s architect, old. There is only one 2-seater car, and I've seen the perfect version of this. Jonathan Connolly actually has it. And it's the Ferrari 308 GT4.
You're obsessed with these things.
I'm obsessed, and he's got the back taken out. So there's no back seat. Neil's on. His is silver with dark blue Connolly leather manual. I've never seen. He says it's robust as fuck. Neil, quick! While you've got an internet connection.
Yes, I can hear you.
So Neil, just very quickly, give us your 2-car garage whilst you sit on an aeroplane.
Okay, let me just remember. It was a CSK 2-door Range Rover.
Yeah.
There's always one of those kicking around that some idiot has spent 150 grand restoring. There was one at DK recently. It's either the super rare automatic or the super rare manual. So you're going to nick that for 80 grand. And then there was 55 grand left I had or something.
Yeah.
I was going V12 convertible manual E-Type. The one that no one wants, therefore you'll nick it for 55 grand.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's cool. It's cool. It's got those 4 exhaust pipes and that V12 badge.
Yeah.
So it's fine. That's mine.
Wonderful.
Charles Spencer King. Yeah.
Charles Spencer King. Chris Cooper.
No, I've done mine. Yeah.
Oh, you've done yours.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's what happens with sleep deprivation. Let's try a little bit of music before we go. Obviously, Brian Wilson's just passed away. And he might have been one of the greatest popular songwriters ever
totally
produced by this species. I'm going to get in there first and say that if I'm a little bit sensitive and God only knows comes on, I'm normally welling up because I think it's so beautiful, and I'm going to listen to Pet Sounds all the way to Le Mans when I drive there tonight. Let's go with Neil Clifford for some music.
Well, I saw the Pet Shop Boys, the Beach Boys, in concert 3 months ago at the Dallas Country Club in just outside Dallas. I think it was their last ever gig. Someone I know's 75th birthday, and I only know one song by them, which is what is it called? Good Vibrations.
Yeah,
it's really good. But yeah, I saw them 3 months ago.
Wow, unbelievable!
Amazing. Yeah,
the man that's always there. Manish.
Well, it has to be the one that was bastardized for British Caledonian, hasn't it? California Girls. Do you remember the British Caledonian ad?
Sadly, I do remember that ad.
I wish they all could be Caledonian girls. It would have to be that. These beautiful raven-haired, blue-eyed Scottish stewardesses in Dafton. Very nice.
Chris Cooper.
For exactly the same reasons as Mr. Harris, I chose God Only Knows by the Beach Boys.
I'll forget. Oh, look, Neil's gone. That means the plane's taken off. Thank you very much for joining us on this week's podcast. I'm going back to Le Mans. Chris Cooper's going back to bed. And Manish probably needs to deal with a slightly heavy head because it's full of lovely Barolo from last night. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we look forward to speaking to you again next week.